26 plus 52 equals 78. See what they did there? The Atari 7800, known as the Pro System, was announced in 1984, designed to be a successor to the 2600, but also the far newer 5200. We never got the 5200 officially in the UK, and indeed it had been a relative flop, whilst the 2600 was continuing to sell. So the 7800 was designed to be backwards compatible with the 2600 to try and capitalise on the enduring popularity of that system. The 7800 wasn't produced by an in-house team at Atari. It was designed externally by the General Computer Corporation. It runs on a 6502 running at 1.79 megahertz, but it can switch down to 1.19 megahertz when in 2600 mode and has 4K of RAM. The graphics in the system were improved over the rest of the Atari 8-bit range. It's got a custom chip called Maria, 256 colours in resolution of up to 320 by 288. Slightly strangely, the sound capabilities are exactly the same as the 2600, i.e. very basic, the TIA sound from that console. However, the console can have improved sound if the sound chip is included on the cartridge. And that's what we got with a Pokey chip from the Atari XL and XE, added to Ball Blazer and Commando. But they're the only two games that ever took advantage of it. Apparently an even better chip was in development but never made it to market. As I mentioned, the console was announced in 1984, but it was delayed for 2 years due to the Jack Tramiel takeover of Atari. There was loads of squabbling over things like unpaid bills, and it didn't make it out until 1986. So here we are with the Box 7800. I've had this one for about 15 years, and you'll be saying to me, why haven't you seen it on ChinnyVision before now? Here we are, episode 400 and whatever, and the answer is it only has RF out, and that RF out is pretty poor. It's one of the worst modulators I've ever come across this side of, early ZX Spectrums. It's absolutely horrible, and modern tuners won't lock onto it. So you really need to get them composite modded, which is what I finally had this done to this one. Simon Locke sorted me out on that, the Futures 8-bit composite mod, and also took the opportunity to do a few other things that we'll discuss shortly. But this is what you would have got if you'd bought this in the UK in the late 80s, early 90s, in fact across Europe, because I can see other languages on the side. Atari 7800 TM, video game system, Asteroids free game included, and on the side we can see, in many languages, arcade quality graphics, colour and sound. Okay, new fingertip control joypads, and that's because the Proline controllers proved to be unpopular. Play 7800 games, 7800 super games, and all 2600 games, and continually expanding game library, which if you bought this in 1994, wouldn't exactly have been true. I've got some pictures of some of the games available down the side, and over the other side we can see this box contains a video games console, 2 fingertip control joypads, RF video cable, power adapter, owner's manual. And the front and back are pretty much, yeah, they're the same. And anything else on the side here? No, they've mirrored it all the way around. And what's on the back? What's on the back here? The Atari 7800 system offers you an extensive library of games, arcade classics that bring the arcade experience home, thrilling action adventure games that make you part of the action, and exciting sport hits that really put you in the game. You can add your own Atari Super Games to your 7800 games collection. They offer you the hottest titles and computer formats in the arcades. And remember, the 7800 system also plays all 2600 games. And we've got pictures of games like Miss Pac-Man, Krakatoa, Dig Dug, Xevious, Ball Blazer, Joust, and so on the back. So let's have a look inside and see what you get for your money. Right, okay. Let's open this up. And these packs, by the way, I've heard tell of these being on sale in the mid-90s in places like newsagents. Most Atari 7800 owners in the UK probably got theirs through catalogues such as Littlewoods and places like that, because these weren't in Dixon's that I ever saw, or Curry's, or Rumbelows, or Tandy. Atari basically sold most of their units through catalogues. And apparently somebody from Atari is quoted as saying mainly into lesser affluent areas as well, less affluent areas. So it's people buying through catalogues, and the catalogues weren't like the Argos catalogue or something like that. These catalogues were designed for people to buy things and then buy them on stage payments. So catalogues used to be quite popular, and may still be going in less affluent areas where people would buy an item and then would pay for it over several payments, several months. Got a serial number on the side of the console there as well. And this is a 1992 unit on the side here, it says. So inside you get your console. There. I'll have a look at that in a second. And I mean, this isn't boxed up properly. In fact, I know one of my controllers isn't in here. You get a power supply, linear power supply, weighs a ton. It is 9 volts, 1 amp. And it comes with this funny connector on the side there. Look at that. And sorry for changing lighting conditions today. It's a really kind of sunny and then cloudy day outside. So you see that? That's what Atari decided to put onto the console. A funny little 2-pin thing that looks quite unlike anything else. The good news is that you can replace the barrel jack on the console when you get your composite mod done, and I highly recommend you do that. We'll look at that in a minute. No RF cable in here. This is one of the controllers. I'm not going to mince my words here. They are absolutely horrific. These can be screwed in or out, I think. Yes. So you can have your thing like that, which is horrible. Or you can have this little nub in like that. Or you get that in there, which is slightly less horrible, but still horrible. The buttons here are kind of slightly soft plastic and are as responsive as something that's incredibly not responsive. I mean, they're worse than the GX4000 joypads. I'm going to put my neck on the line there, upset the Atari fans, but these are some of the worst joypads I've ever used on official devices. I'm not, not kind of those unofficial Chinese Nintendo NES clones, family clone things, but no, it is awful. You also get a manual for your built-in Asteroids game and owner's manual for your video game system. And again, I just apologise for the lighting today. I keep having to adjust the camera because daylight comes into the kitchen here and it's gone cloudy. It's gone really dark outside. It was really sunny when I started. So, yeah, properly professional channel this, honest. So here we are, the main console. And it looks like an Atari console, doesn't it, really? We have to remember, of course, the 2600 was redesigned at this point to look like the 7800. You've got this lovely colour thing going across here. There, with the logo on there. And this is metal. And cartridges go in there. They face backwards. The power switch isn't it is a physical power switch, but it doesn't physically switch the power. It appears to do something to the main board. It's like a standby button. I don't think unless I'm wrong there, there's something about it that doesn't quite feel... It feels like the pause button, and I don't know. It may be a proper switch. I'm not sure if it's just something that operates something else. Got a pause button there, and the familiar select and reset button you have on your other Ataris, including your home computers, and not the ST, obviously. Around the front here, you have got 2 standard Atari joystick ports. Of course, they're going to be standard. Atari invented them. So, the Atari-style joystick port. And you got, for 2600 games, the difficulty switches there, which I don't think have much difference in 1700 games. Power system made in China. Our serial number is on the back. And we've got some little rubber feet and these little fin things. I don't know what they are. Therefore, it's very, very simple. But one thing I noticed about my console here is it still has its protective layer on there. Over there. See, all protected. Shall we? I mean, it's only been there for, well, 30, 25 years, something like that. Shall we remove it? It's ChinnyVision, of course we're going to remove it. Right, here we go. There we go. Ho, ho, ho. There you go. Because that's what we do. This is me. I once opened a sealed copy of Jet Set Willy on Twitter just for a laugh, and I don't even have the clip anymore. You can just see there where the thing had split over the years. Look at that. Look how lovely and shiny it is. Just a little bit of tarnish where the bits hadn't covered over the years. Cool. I mean, it does look like an expensive, it's going to scratch to hell now, obviously, but it does look like a nice thing across the top there, that kind of shiny finish. It looks like it's trying to look like Japanese. Panasonic and people like that did a lot of stuff like that at this time, didn't they? And that colour, it's just so colourful. Colourful, is that the word I'm looking for? But yeah, it's a nice looking console. And considering how late it came out, I just think that it would just look great. And it still kind of looks fresh. Weirdly, with the modern console looks that you see these days, there's something about it that still looks kind of like you'd be happy to have this under your TV. However, sadly, the good parts of the design finished there. So yeah, it looks lovely, but of course Atari are cheapskates, right? So we come to the games and you just get horrible cardboard boxes that damage really easily. The cartridges sit inside, so they are cheap. The Lynx suffered from this as well, didn't it? So my machine's been looked at by Simon Locke so that I could have a composite mod installed. I've chosen the Futurist 8-bit composite mod. I've also taken the opportunity to ask Simon to recap the machine and install a standard power connector on it. So this is what it looked like internally when he got it. And as you can see, the date at the bottom right-hand side there is week 32, 1993. So take note, Wikipedia, week 32, 1993. Not a huge amount going on inside here, but the modulator top left has to come out. There's going to be work top right to install the power switch, and Simon's also going to put in a new voltage regulator and just generally tidy it all up. So that's where the voltage regulator lives, on that giant heatsink, and that's where the power connector is going to go in. I'm having a standard barrel power jack put in, so you can basically use a Sinclair Spectrum power supply with negative centre. You don't routinely need to recap these machines, but because this work is going on anyway, you might as well. And there's the kit that comes from the Futurist 8-bit. You get a little board there with a connector, a couple of wires, and a breakout cable. The breakout cable is one of those ones that you used to see on home video cameras, the analog ones, to get composite out and also your sound out. To install it, the entire modulator comes out. I didn't fancy doing this myself, so I've got Simon to do it for me. I'll link to him in the description below. It has all sorts of console and computer repairs and modifications. And there we go, all done. So this is what the output now looks like. And it is Choplifter, Choplifter, rescue the hostages. And it looks far better. No, it's not RGB or S-Video quality. You can get those mods. I think it's an RGB mod available for the 7800, but I really don't think it's worthwhile for what I'm doing. Just the expense and all the rest of it. The Futurist 8-bit mod's very affordable. And this is Commando running with the pokey sound. It's a very decent port of Commando. Even better if you're not playing on the horrific Atari joypads. Motorpsycho is a 1990 game. I'm guessing probably commissioned by Atari UK or Atari Europe. Very big draw distances. It's a kind of a little bit like Road Rash, kind of. Xevious, an ancient game. It is generally regarded as the best home version of Xevious. It's just a shame it was such an old game when Atari ported it to the system. Asteroids comes built into, well, UK consoles by default. You just turn it on and it's there. Basic game, but actually it's a nice port of Asteroids. Ball Blazer. We've viewed this on ChinnyVision so many times. And this is the definitive version, the enhanced graphics of the 7800, the Maria chip. It's just faster, smoother and better. It's such a good game. Food Fight's another 1984 game. Again, feeling its age by the time the console came out, but a really good port. A really good port. You throw food at the chefs who come to get you. Really nice. Fatal Run, another 1990 game. It was very similar to that motorbike game. Almost like a Chase HQ rip-off, almost, kind of. But you have all road blasters. It feels ancient by 1990 standards. You think you got Burning Rubber on the GX4000, and then you go and play this. Speaking of ancient, but far better than that game, Dig Dug, and again, probably the best home version of the game. The only problem is, it was so old by the time this console came out. Likewise, Centipede, an excellent conversion of Centipede. A really, you don't have a trackball, but, apart from that, it's brilliant. Desert Falcon, an interesting game. All these kind of box of games I've got here. It's a bit like Zaxxon, but you're a flying bird. And it's quite good fun. It's well presented. Sadly, it only has the basic TIA 2600 sound, like all of these games apart from Commando and Ball Blazer. Speaking of 2600, what happens if you put a 2600 cartridge into the system? Well, here's Pole Position. And it works just like a 2600 would. And it kind of highlights that sound problem, how basically using the TIA sounds, in a 1990 game that we saw earlier, ridiculous really. But you've got the advantage here, any 2600 game you want to play plugs straight into the system. So when the machine finally launched, some of the games for the machine were actually quite old, over 2 years old, and that they had a marketing budget a fraction of that of Sega and Nintendo. It took Atari 2 years to sell their first million consoles. In contrast, between September 87 and August 1988, Nintendo shipped 5 million consoles in the USA. In 1987, again in the USA, Nintendo shipped 7 NESs for every 7800 Atari sold. So why did the 7800 fail? Well, it came out late, it relied on old games titles, and Atari seemed to have a very muddled lineup with 3 8-bit systems. They had the ancient 2600, the 7800, and all the XE variants. And indeed, in the USA, 5200s may still have been hanging around in shops on discount. All these machines offered cartridge gaming, but only the 7800 could also play 2600 titles. Atari didn't have the marketing budget to match their competitors, and the machine lived at the fringes of retail for much of its life. The chances of you visiting a local software shop or WH Smith's or something like that and picking up a 7800 game was basically low to zero. I really like the 7800. It's one of the first consoles I got in when eBay became a thing. I got this console here with, it must have been about 20 games at the time. And it's got some really good titles on it. The best version of Ball Blazer, Food Fight's really good. However, it doesn't have that massive titles your Sega and Nintendo 8-bits are going to have. Indeed, there's nothing that really stands absolutely head and shoulders above the other Atari 8-bit fare. Ball Blazer's good, but is it worth getting a 7800 just for Ball Blazer? Probably not. That said, it's a system you can easily collect for because there's only a limited selection of titles and all the boxes will match, so they're going to look good on your shelf, although the boxes are easily damaged. That said, in many ways it's far more interesting than machines like the Sega Master System and Nintendo Entertainment System because it did live at the fringes, and there are these oddity games available for it that you probably have never heard of. Yes, you're going to have to mod it to get a picture onto a modern TV, and no, it's never going to have the cleanest output unless you spend serious money. But I still really like the machine. It just looks great on the shelf, and it still has that Atari cachet of just not being a Sega or Nintendo console. And if someone came to you one day and said you've got to clear out 2/3 or 3/4 of all your systems here, well, I tell you what, the 7800 is definitely a keeper.